Our next speaker is Sam Bushman, and Sam is a unique individual. He comes to us from Utah, where he lives with his wife and 8 children. He homeschools. He and his wife homeschool their children, so he's in good company here. Yeah. He and his wife are both mortgage bankers. I guess that's how they make their money, but he also has been involved actively in radio for more than 20 years. And he does 2 radio programs. One of them is Liberty Roundtable. The other is Tech Watch Radio. I'm not really familiar with Tech Watch because I'm not very much of a techie, but he is. But Liberty Roundtable, he does me the honor of having me on every month. He also has Scott Bradley on every month, and I'm sure some other people you know. He's had Shailene Nightingale and Chuck Baldwin, and he's been a real friend of the Constitution Party in helping us get the message out over his Liberty Roundtable radio show. And a true patriot, a true believer in the Constitution and the application of the Constitution principles to government. He's a great friend, and he's here to help us get the message out. We struggle with how we can get the message out to the people. We know that we have the message of truth, but we struggle, we get frustrated with going against the major media and getting that message out. So Sam Bushman is going to come and tell us that he who has the media makes the rules. To have your views heard in the media, you'd better own a piece of the media. Let's welcome Sam Bushman. Oh, I forgot to mention Kurt Crosby, who is the sidekick here who helps him. Sam has been blind his entire life, so he needs some assistance here, and Kurt Crosby is here he's on his radio. He always introduces his radio with Buenos Dias. So maybe you want to say Buenos Dias.
Well, the way I start it, Sam always asks me or introduces me a little bit, and then I say, Buenos dias, greetings and salutations, howdy, howdy, howdy. Thank you, Sam.
And I start the broadcast out by saying, happy to have you along, broadcasting live from atop the Rocky Mountains, the crossroads of the West. Our goal is to promote God, family, and country in the media and our lives, and we use news the networks refuse to use. Bottom line is, if it's according to the supreme law of the land, we love it. If not, we hate it. So that's how we start out the show. Now, I just want to tell Pat we're pro-life. I've got 8 kids, me and my wife Julie, and Kurt and his wife have 11 children. We homeschool them all and don't take a dime from the government education system. Now, I titled the talk, He Who Has the Media Makes the Rules, on purpose, because I think of a principle called the power of one. You know, each of you really, ladies and gentlemen, are the power of one, are you not? And at first, a lot of times, they try to teach you in the mainstream press or in the government schools, wherever you go. Part of their indoctrination program is, one doesn't really matter. It's only one. You can't make a difference. You can eat Skittles in a movie, and that's about all you can do. Okay? But it isn't the truth. It's a lie. And the power of one is quite incredible. I'm going to name a couple of people just to see what you think. You ever heard of Rupert Murdoch? Is he one? Oh, one powerful one, is he not? Have you heard of... I don't know, Bill Gates. What about like a Steve Jobs? Didn't Steve Jobs drop out of college? Didn't he start a business in his garage? But what an impact did he make? So you know what? I agree with Pat by small things, and I should say I agree with the Lord. Pat quoted it, though. You know what? By small things, great things are accomplished, and I think that's no different here. So we've got a slideshow presentation, give you a couple of pictures, a couple of the things we're discussing along the way, and I'll just tell them which slide I'm on so we don't get mixed up there. But he who owns the media makes the rules. And so I'm simply saying, if you want to have your say in the media, you better own a piece of the media. All right, now it starts out, I've got 3 kind of sections to the discussion today. Number 1 is the story of Sam and Kurt. The power of one becomes the power of 2, then the few, then the many. But Sam and Kurt have a unique story as we get started out. Then I'm going to tell you the problem I have with the mainstream press and those who pretend they're not part of it. The issue is honesty. And then third, I want to talk about what we, meaning individuals, groups, can do to make a difference. Because you know what? We can't present problems without solutions. And that's really the problem that I have with the mainstream press is they're great at the problems. Oh, they can tell you how bad things are every day, all day long, to where when you get done, you just want to go commit suicide almost. Not that you ever would, but I'm just saying it's very depressing. Okay, so if they ever tell you I committed suicide, it's a lie. It isn't true. But I bring this up to say that it matters, ladies and gentlemen, what we think about and believe and focus on. What we put in our minds eventually either comes out garbage in, garbage out, or it comes out successful if we put the right stuff in. So it starts with the Sam and Kurt story, and I met Kurt back in 91. I actually went over to his house to get some political campaign material, and we became fast friends ever since. We were listening to the radio one night, and we heard some hard-hitting talk radio that were like, wow, either these guys are nuts, and they've fallen off the map, or what they say is true. And we researched it, found out it was true. Okay, and when we found out it was true, we basically said, all right, well, we got to do something about this. They're telling the truth. And so we researched, talked to some radio station owners and said, hey, you put this stuff on at night. How do we get it on in the day at a better time to listen? And they basically said, what are you talking about? We just turn on the satellite and go home. We said, no, you got to listen. This stuff is awesome. Then we talked to them, and they said, well, we're not going to put it on. We said, we'll pay you. They said, deal. Okay, the bottom line is money talks. But you know what? My real story in radio starts way before that. When I was about 4 or 5 years old, all my friends would play baseball and basketball and run outdoors and play. I used to sit there and listen to a transistor radio. I used to listen to Wolfman Jack and all these talk show hosts. I said, man, I want to be like those guys. This is awesome. So believe it or not, my mom checked into broadcasting school when I was about 5, and their statement was, forget it, kid, it's like being a rock star. I get the last laugh. All right, so what happened is we finally decided to pay these radio station owners, and they would play games. At first would run the radio ads, then would pay them after, and then all of a sudden they came to us and said, you got to pay in advance. We're like, why? We've been paying on time. They're like, that's just the way it is. Remember, he who owns the media makes the rules. So we eventually decided we had enough of that. We went out of the frying pan into the fire. We went and looked for a radio station. I sold a house of mine, and we bought it. And Kurt Crosby and I, both of us, moved our whole families 100 miles and ran this radio station. We learned by hard knocks. I was chief bottle washer. Kurt did everything else. And we learned a lot. We did that, and we finally sold that radio station in 2005. Okay, so that's how we got our experience in radio. We ran one for 10 years, and we learned all about what to do, what not to do, etc. Now we syndicate a nationally syndicated radio program called Liberty Roundtable. It's syndicated on AM and FM radio stations. You can hear it live and on demand via a ton of methods, which I'll get into in a minute. But along the way, we kind of discovered we had a, slide 4, media, what do you call it, reality check? Yeah, we learned that, you know what? There's a few, I don't know what you'd say, rules along the way. Number 1, did you know that radio takes lots and lots of money? Yeah, it really does. It's very expensive indeed. We don't have to have as much money as the other guys because we're passionate about what we do and we're very careful with the money we spend. But you know what? The fact is the media takes money. Number 2, we learned that people can't take the controversy. I mean, I had friends for life, so I thought that when you start telling the tale on the radio, pretty soon they're like, Sam Bushman, who's that? I don't know him. Well, do you remember that? There was a guy who was denied 3 times. So I kind of feel like a little bit that we're learning about what the Savior's gone through. Not completely, because of course we'll never be as humble and perfect as he is. But I'm just telling you, you get kind of an idea when everybody starts rejecting you about what things matter, about what things are important, etc. So you learn too that people just can't take the controversy. Number 3, you learn that the wrong kind of advertisers, they will either 1, try to control what you say or drop you like a rock. Okay. Number 4, we learned that lots and lots of friends make heavy loads light. Think about moving a house. If it's just you and your spouse trying to move your house, it's like on the 4th day you're about to die, right? But if you have 20, 30 people over and you have pizza, pretty soon in 3 or 4 hours, you got the bulk of things moved and you're feeling pretty good, right? That's kind of how it works in the mainstream press. Everybody has different rules. Everybody's not going to be a talk show host like I am. Some people are great writers. Other people have money and they fund operations. Other people tell the tale to their friends. Other people help create venues so that we can talk and speak and share the message of liberty everywhere we go. Number 5. So we kind of created a mission statement for our radio program. And I want you to know that news the networks refuse to use will never be supported in the mainstream. All right, so news the networks refuse to use has never been and will never be supported in the mainstream press. Okay? And there's reasons for that. They all get big money. And I'm telling you, the second they tell the tale, the second they jettison the Republican press, is the second they're gone. Okay? But I'm telling you, we receive the best education ever. And our goal is to promote God, family, and country in the media in our lives and invite all Americans to get involved in the solutions for America. So there's a lot of ways you can listen to alternative media. We're only a couple of talk show hosts among the many that do hard-hitting political talk radio that doesn't just tout the mainstream press line. And you know, when we first started out, we owned an AM radio station, and it was about the only way you could listen. And people could only listen in the given area that we were in, which was in Utah. It was a little bit out in the country radio station. But that's the only people that could listen. People around the nation really couldn't listen. But things have matured in the media area significantly to where now, a whole lot less expensive than before, we can tell our tale across the country. So Liberty Roundtable is now nationally syndicated to AM and FM radio stations, and you can listen in a bunch of different ways. For example, did you know Ford and Chevy and all those guys are starting to put internet radios in their cars? There is an aftermarket device called a Livio. It's a little device. It's small enough to fit in your hand. It's $119. You buy that one time. You can plug it into your car stereo and listen to internet radio. There's also a device called a Roku player, R-O-K-U. It means 6 in Japanese, just in case you're wondering. And this Roku player is a little device you plug into your TV and you plug into your internet. And you can get about 250 channels. Most of them are free. Some of them are a couple of bucks a year. You can watch Amazon On Demand movies with it. You can watch Netflix with it. You can watch, what do they call that, Hulu with it. That's internet TV. And there's about 200 plus other channels. Well, Liberty Roundtable is one of those channels. It's called Liberty News Radio on the Roku player. And you can listen to our show live or on demand. Anytime, 24/7, anywhere in the nation. Or the world for that matter. And you know, I bring this all up not really to promote Liberty Roundtable as much as to let you know things are changing in media. And it's getting to where any of us can listen to what we want. Everything is becoming a niche market to where you can enjoy what you like the most. Okay? We have unlimited listen lines where you can listen to us 24/7. If you have unlimited long distance at work or at home or on your cell phone, if you just dial the 712-432-6623 number, that's 712-432-6623, you can listen. Just put it on speakerphone and listen to your heart's content anytime you want. There's smartphones that can get live and on-demand radio. It's actually quite amazing. So that's kind of our story. We simply put our money where our mouth was. We believe there needs to be honesty in the media. We went out, Sam won, Kurt won, the power of two, and bought a radio station. And we talked to quite a few. And now, because of all of our involvement, we have the opportunity to talk to you. And you know what? Our story is not unique. There are Americans getting involved all over this land. We've been in the Patriot movement for 20 years, and I'm telling you, in the last 2, 3, 4, 5 years, we've seen more activity, more people putting their money where their mouth is, more people dedicated to the cause than ever before. That's why the Constitution Party is the third largest party in the nation via voter registration. Number 7. Yep. All right, so the next slide is called bipartisan media. And to me here, the issue is honesty, okay? So we're going to take on the 4 top-tier talk show hosts in the nation. We're talking about Rush Limbaugh, Sean Hannity, Glenn Beck, and Michael Savage. We're also going to take on Fox News. And the reason we're going to take those folks on is because, you know, many people would say, oh, it's sour grapes. You guys just wish you were as big as they. No, I actually like to take my wife out to dinner and not be harassed. Thank you. So I don't need to be that popular. That's not what it's about. But it is about honesty in the media. And it is about teaching Americans what really happens in the media. Okay, I'm not saying those guys intend to be dishonest. They're just simply marching to the drum they're forced to march to. That's all. You know, Pat Buchanan kind of said it best. He said, you know what? It's really the left and right wings of the same bird of prey. That's the Republicans and the Democrats. He kind of calls them twins, right? And you know, that's the truth. Do you want to just have big business media or government media? You know, they love to, in the Hegelian dialectics, slap each other around, but only within appropriate context, right? They'll never really take anything on directly. So in the radio business and TV, you get this term that I learned about from Chuck Harder called the velvet hammer. And the velvet hammer means they don't really come to you directly and say, you know what, Sam, you can't say that on the radio. Or Sam, you better say this on the radio. They do it like this. Let's just say that I'm, critical of the Federal Reserve. Okay? I just say, you know what, and the Fed, shut that sucker down. It's horrible. It's a curse. It creates dishonest money. We can't have it. Which, by the way, that's where I absolutely stand and make no bones about it. But see, you say that, and what will happen to you is an executive will invite you into the office and sit down and say, you know, Sam, we need to have a chat here. You know, you're an incredible talk show host. They'll spend some time building you up to make you feel like, you know, you're important to them. And then they'll say, you know, when you're that, forceful with your words, Sam, and you talk about the Federal Reserve like you do, you know, we might lose our White House press passes. And you know, those meetings with George Bush or Bill Clinton or Barack Obama, they're kind of important for our news gathering, and you realize your paycheck kind of has a relation to this shit. Sam, you understand, right? Wham, that velvet hammer hits hard, does it not? And they didn't really fire me. In fact, they told me I was an incredible talk show host. But what they really said is, Sam, you better say or not say certain things. They won't make a big deal about it if I don't go along. They'll just simply have a reason to let me go. Okay? So if it's Rush Limbaugh, Sean Hannity, Glenn Beck, Michael Savage, any of the big boys, that's what happens to them. And I'm here to document why a lot of that happens and how it happens, etc. So now we're on slide 8, which is Rush Limbaugh admits he's a water boy for the mainstream press, okay? And for the Republicans. See, he's in the business media, right? Now, the Democrats are in the government-controlled owned media. They're just in the big business in bed with government media. Okay, that's how it works. And so Rush Limbaugh's kind of talking along, and he admits he's a water boy for the Republicans. He's sick of carrying their water. But then he kind of says in the rest of this story, and we document the sources in these stories. You guys can go look them up on the internet later if you so choose. But he basically says, hey, you know, I don't really like carrying the water, especially when they sell me down the river with things that I cringe at and have a hard time dealing with, but it's better than the alternative. See, isn't that the lie we're told over and over and over? So you got the top, supposed, not part of the mainstream press, right? Media telling you that's the way it is. We got to vote for the lesser of two evils. I don't like what I'm doing. I know it's wrong, but I got to do it because it's better than what's worse. And I'm just simply telling you that I'm not interested in the lesser of two evils. I'm interested in truth, and I'm interested in what's right. So Rush Limbaugh coins this term, the drive-by media, right? And he makes fun of the mainstream inside press, never mind that he's with one of the biggest radio networks in the country. Okay, they're huge. He's on about 400 plus radio stations. He pretends he's not part of the mainstream press. And so I've got my first soundbite, and the word is gracious. Remember that word, gracious. And what happens is you get organizations, news media, that get press releases, which really are talking points of what words you're supposed to use and what vein you're supposed to put things in. And so he makes fun of them for all doing this. But if you listen carefully, what he does is he makes fun of them at first for doing that, and then he does the same thing in the same soundbite, just proving that he's one of them. Listen to this.
I'm sorry, but this Ron Paul is going to destroy this party if they keep, if this is nuts on parade. The media loves this guy as nuts on parade. They want the whole Republican Party to be identified with the kookiness of Ron Paul. Hey, let Iran get nukes. It's our fault anyway. 1979 happened because they weren't minding our own business. That audience goes nuts. Oh my gosh, what am I watching here? Oh, look who's on Fox. Oh, there he is outside the ice cream stand. Good old Ron Paul. Yeah, that's what we need.
All right, so the next soundbite I've got is going to talk about the gracious issue, but I want to point this out. So what is the drive-by media? It's kind of a reference to you just drive by, take pot shots at people with anonymity, right? Okay, well, didn't he just do that to Ron Paul? Wasn't that just like a drive-by, shoot you in the head to Ron Paul? Well, it's like, well, good old Ron Paul by the ice cream stand. Wow. Okay, then the Republican platform and Ron Paul, are they pretty much in unison? They're pretty close. The platform, at least. The Constitution, which you swear your oath to when you become a congressman, senator, president, etc. Ron Paul's right in line. Now, this isn't about promoting Ron Paul, but it just goes to show you he kind of talks about the drive-by media, and then he does his own drive-by, right? Interesting, Rush. Appreciate that. But it shows that, you know what? You're doing what you complain they do. All right? Now we got the next slide, number 9, and it talks about how they fake radio calls. I'll get to that in a second. But listen to this soundbite here now, where where Rush Limbaugh does this gracious thing.
By the way, listen to this montage yesterday and last night from the drive-by media.
What really struck the Obama camp was how gracious President Bush was.
It was one gracious couple welcoming another.
The senator remarked how gracious President Bush was.
They were incredibly gracious.
President and Mrs. Bush were extremely gracious.
George W. Bush has been incredibly gracious.
President Bush has made this pretty easy by being so gracious.
It's very gracious of President Bush.
Everything we hear is that he was very, very gracious.
This is President Bush at his best, being very gracious.
A visit that aides described as gracious.
The Bushes are very gracious and decent people.
The Bushes, who are very gracious people.
They're being gracious about it.
President Bush has been totally gracious.
President Bush has been extremely gracious.
Laura and George Bush could not have been more gracious.
The grace, the class that the Bushes showed.
I keep hearing reports that the president has been very gracious about all this.
The last two voices you heard were the forehead, Paul Begala and Charlie Rose. Now, this is beyond absurd, and it is infuriating, because whatever you think on policy, all of these people have known for 8 years what a decent and gracious man George W. Bush is. They sought to destroy him. Wow. He didn't fight back. Now, all of a sudden, that he's being nice to Obama. He's being nice to the Messiah. Well, look at what a gracious and decent guy George W. Bush is. It's another indictment of the unprofessionalism of journalists today.
I got a question. Did he just indict himself? I just think that's very interesting. He trashes them in the drive-by media, but I also kind of wonder, where did they all get that word from? The answer is that word came from a talking point, and it's basically this. If you want to progress in the media, you want to become bigger, more important, get future jobs, you want to be in, you better use the word gracious in one of your next news stories. And if you don't, I'm telling you not. So to me now, I've learned that if politicians don't say end the Fed on the spot, they're not one of us. Okay, if they want to use it like that, I'm telling you, they got to have words that you better use. We need to start to have words. If you're not willing to publicly say you're ready to end the Fed, if you're not really publicly ready to say you're ready to shut down the Federal Reserve and the Education Department, and I could go right on down the list, the BATF, the IRS, et cetera. But you know what? If they're not willing to say that, they're not one of us, are they? And the reason they're not one of us is because we use this supreme law of the land, the Constitution, as our guide. Remember, and if it's constitutional, we love it. And if it's not, we hate it. That's why. And if they're not willing to come out publicly and say what they really believe, then there's a concern for sure. All right, so Rush Limbaugh's parent company. Now, did you know that's the same parent company for Glenn Beck and Sean Hannity, too? Did you know that? Yeah, it's just they're not really part of the mainstream press. I just want you to understand that. But what happens is they fake their own radio calls. Did you know that? They do. Proven, documented. They have a company that actually hires actors and actresses. They give them $40 an hour, guaranteed like an hour a week or whatever. And what happens is you get these scripts. And so if I'm an actor, I'll call into, Rush doesn't take phone calls unless it's Dick Cheney. Now, see, this is true. Dick Cheney called into Rush, and he basically was able to get on the radio and talk. But the rest of us can't call Rush because Rush doesn't take phone calls. But his parent company does so for Glenn Beck and Sean Hannity. And those guys basically fake radio calls. So what they do is they have a script. Let's say that you want to make Ron Paul look like an idiot. Then you have somebody kind of call in with the right script that's a very good actor that can do voices or that can whatever the case, and then they make whoever they want to be like a fool. Or let's say there's an issue that's starting to get credibility. Oh, then what you do is there's Ron Paul over there by the ice cream stand, and then they'll take a phone call and they'll promote this agenda of whatever they want to promote or whatever they want to reject. And here's the interesting part. The actors are sworn to secrecy based on their contract. Go look up the news stories that we quote here and you'll see what I'm talking about. They can get fired and have serious repercussions if they tell anybody that it's being done. They have these scenarios, which they're always faked, but they're pitched on the air as real. I got a question. It's an issue of honesty, is it not? Is it honest? Okay, then what they'll do is you call up and they'll go, there's a wacky Ron Paul guy. Are you eating ice cream too? And then they'll abort your call because they're into abortions, right? Okay, wow. And you kind of look at that and you go, these guys have lost their minds. But that's the way they play the game. They have to play the game that way. If they don't play the game that way and they really give credence to the Constitution Party, then it would be the largest party in the nation. That's the power of the media, my fellow Americans. All right, number 10, let's go to Sean Hannity. Sean Hannity got busted, ladies and gentlemen. He didn't mean to. He had to apologize. But here's what happened. He faked crowd sizes, okay? So he was promoting for Michelle Bachmann this against the Obamacare bill stuff. And Michelle Bachmann had a rally, but there wasn't very many people there. And so Sean didn't really like that, you know what I mean? So he got a video from Glenn Beck from a couple of months earlier, and he put that crowd size in. The problem is, there's a guy from The Daily Show, he's a comedian, right? And this comedian caught him, because what happened is the video had like, I don't know, the leaves were different, and the seasons were different in the videos, and well, he caught him and made fun of them. And so Sean blatantly had to admit he got caught. Of course, he said it was an inadvertent error. But my question is, how do you get Glenn Beck videos mixed with Sean Hannity videos? There's a parent company that's similar, though, huh? Interesting how that works. But anyway, and I don't know how you get different season events mixed up, too. But anyway, they really got mixed up. They're so sorry, they promise. But listen to this soundbite as they catch Sean Hannity deceiving the people.
Time for the sideshow. Re-rack the tape. Last night, Jon Stewart did an expose of Fox News' coverage of that anti-healthcare reform rally last week here in Washington. Let's watch it.
Change was in the air, and Fox News was there to cover it.
People didn't just come to hear speakers. They then pivoted, fanned out, went into the Capitol, went into the office buildings, were very polite, went from door to door to door, knocked on the doors. We handed out actual pages from the bill.
I'm sorry, can we get back? I apologize, I didn't mean to interrupt. That was weird. Because when that clip started, it was a clear fall day in Washington, D.C. Not a cloud in the sky. The leaves have changed. It's well attended but sparse. All of a sudden, the trees turn green again, and it's cloudy, and it looks like thousands and thousands of more people arrived. If I didn't know any better, I would think they just put 2 different days together and acted like they didn't. Where have I seen that last footage before?
This is just a fraction. There are
Here's
people
Glenn
meeting
Beck.
all across the country. This is just in Washington, D.C.
Wow, that was actually from Glenn Beck's 9/12 rally 2 months ago, his much bigger 9/12 rally. It seems Sean Hannity used footage of a bigger crowd from a totally different event to make last week's GOP healthcare rally appear more heavily attended.
It was a beautiful sight to see.
Notice, and by the way, in the middle of the day on Thursday.
Yeah, or Saturday. 2 months ago, at a completely different rally.
Jon Stewart, I salute you. So who decided to use 2-month-old file tape to bolster, even balloon the size of that Maryland Michelle Bachmann rally? Anyway, stay tuned.
And finally tonight, although it pains me to say this, Jon Stewart, Comedy Central, he was right. Now, on his program last night, he mentioned that we had played some incorrect video on this program last week while talking about the Republican health care rally on Capitol Hill. He was correct. We screwed up. We aired some video of a rally in September, along with the video from the actual event. It was an inadvertent mistake, but a mistake nonetheless. So, Mr. Stewart, you were right. We apologize. But by the way, I want to thank you and all your writers for watching. And that is all the time we have left this evening. As always, thank you for being with us.
I don't know if Glenn was part of that, but if I was Glenn, I'd probably sue Sean for stealing my video footage. What about you guys? Now, I probably wouldn't sue. I don't believe in lawsuits. But all I'm telling you is it's very interesting. Basically, Glenn said nothing. Is that silence important? I think it says quite a bit, don't you? All right, slide 11. We're on Glenn Beck, speaking of Glenn. Now, Glenn, besides the fact that he thinks that certain people want to destroy the country, we'll get to that in a minute, but Glenn Beck got caught stealing content, ladies and gentlemen. He just basically took it, pretended everybody else's work was his own, didn't admit to the fact that he stole all their content, didn't give them proper attribution or anything like that. Very interesting. The issue is honesty. A buddy of ours, Cliff Kincaid, is one of the folks with Accuracy in Media. He had his stuff personally stolen by Glenn Beck. And Glenn Beck, he just says it's hard to give references for your sources. Wow. You know, you're a multi-millionaire and you work for a multi-billion-dollar company and you guys can't hire somebody to, put the sources on there? Maybe they ought to hire me. The problem is I can't work for them because the Velvet Hammer will just beat me to pieces. All right, so number 12. Oh, wait, we got to go back to number 11 here. We got to tell you about this Glenn Beck issue. He's got this soundbite. Here's what Glenn basically says.
Al-Qaeda, they'd like to destroy us, and they will work with anyone. There are also people like white supremacists or 9/11 truthers that would also like to destroy the country. They'll work with anybody they can.
Now I got a question. It depends on how you define a truther, right? But I would consider myself a truther. I mean, I'm after the truth. Now, if you want to say a truther is somebody who believes a lot of kooky stuff on 9/11, well, I believe it was a government inside job, but I don't necessarily know all the details. But I don't want them to pin that on me either. I just simply want the truth. Do you want the truth? You want the truth, but you're not a truther, right? Oh, because if you say you're a truther, then you go with the Glenn Beck defined definition, and now you're like willing to work with Al-Qaeda and destroy the country. Okay, to me, especially when anybody who, is going to support Ron Paul, if you have a Ron Paul bumper sticker on your car, when they're ready, the Homeland Security to just arrest you as an enemy combatant, Glenn Beck kind of taking the lead for them on this case, right? What do you mean if you're a truther, you're willing to work with Al-Qaeda to destroy the country? My question is Glenn Beck for the truth? Well, he's for the truth, don't you know, but he wouldn't be considered a truther. I get how that works. All I'm telling you is they create these labels and they manipulate you into a corner, and we got to be smart enough not to lie. If they call me a racist, everybody knows it's not true. I don't even know what color you are, okay? But that's how they play the game, though. They just use a label and put you into a corner. So you're a truther, and now any truth you stand. So we don't want any of those truthers, don't want any of those birthers, right? And they just go on and on and on. Well, so we've documented that, Rush does it, Glenn Beck does it. The issue is honesty, my fellow Americans. And even Michael Savage does it. He has the headline. Oh, Hannity does it too. Good point, Kurt. But Michael Savage says basically, you know what? God bless you, don't call me. We'll get into this, ladies and gentlemen. So Michael Savage talked about creating a third party back in 2008. He's still running around deciding he's talking about a third party, But I got news for him. What if he considers the third largest party in the nation by voter registration? Wouldn't that be a good place to start a third party? I doubt Michael's going to take action anytime soon. But Michael trashes Ron Paul too. And see, the issue isn't about Ron Paul. The issue is about the principles that Ron Paul stands for. Okay, that's why Chuck basically supported Ron until Ron got his knees chopped off by the party he supposedly supports. And then Chuck Baldwin basically ran too, right? And got endorsed by Ron Paul. That just shows that it's principle over politics. But I bring this up to say that Michael Savage says that, hey, Ron can't win. So he does two things. I'm going to give you two sound bites from Michael Savage. One, Ron Paul can't win. The mainstream press. I got a question. Is that election tampering if they keep saying that? If they don't know the outcome of the election? But they use their big, huge media microphones to keep hammering the point home. I call it indoctrination. Why don't we leave it up to the polls to find out who can win? But nevertheless, so here is Michael Savage. Go ahead.
If I brought up the questions about, but you see, I know, Beowulf, you know what's going to happen the minute I do this, right? Shall I even tell them what I'm not going to do? Because then they'll do it? Okay, we get flooded every day with Ron Paul fanatics. That's number one. Every day we get flooded with Bertha calls. We don't take them. Boring, bad radio. Okay, that's number one. So if you're a Ron Paul fanatic or a Bertha caller, please, can you do us a favor and leave the lines open for a legitimate caller? It doesn't mean that you don't have a valid point, but I'm not going to cover it. That would be like me covering abortion or reloading ammunition. I mean, if I want to load the lines up, all I got to do is start talking about reloading 30-06 rounds in my basement, which I don't do, right? The minute I get into that, that's the end of the show. Or abortion, various techniques used around the world. We don't do that. There go the lines. I knew it. The minute I said what I wouldn't do.
Now think about that. Don't call in. We want legitimate callers. Do you understand the only legitimate callers are the ones that are faked? You know what I mean? The ones where we get actors that call in that cover the topics and pitch things in the way we want them said. Otherwise, if you're like a real person and you believe in Ron Paul or America or whatever. Now, ladies and gentlemen, it doesn't matter if you believe in the birther issue or the truther issue. The point is they don't want Americans bringing up things that are important to America. They want their paid actors to bring up content. And then he defines radio. He says, it's bad radio when you do that, guys. Calling and asking about, like, abortion. Saying we ought to be pro-life. That's bad radio. Okay? That's the way these people play the game, ladies and gentlemen. All right, second soundbite from Michael Savage.
It is the Savage Nation. Of course, we got a TSA perv. That's not being talked about. We got pornography in the public libraries where people are just so offended they're running out in horror. And the ACLU says that's perfectly legal for your child to be subjected to child pornography in a museum, in a library. That's America today. Now I'm supposed to where Ron Paul is in. Okay, big deal. He has about as less of a chance than I do to be president. Not that his ideas are wrong, but I'm a pragmatist. Why throw the election to Obama? with running a guy who can't win. Why? Why would you do that? All right, now I'm going to get the Ron Paul fanatics. God bless you. Don't call me.
Wow, Ron Paul fanatics, God bless you, don't call me. Not that his ideas are bad. He just can't win and it's a waste of my time and I don't cover that. Do you see that shining through that velvet hammer? He says, I don't cover that stuff, guys. I'm just not going to do it. And I'm telling you right now, it's because he's learned that if he wants to keep his millions of dollars, you better play the game. All right, now, Fox News isn't any better, ladies and gentlemen. Slide 13, Fox News. The issue is honesty. Now, Fox News is the one that got caught with Sean Hannity, faking crowd sizes, right? They'd do it again. We're talking CPAC, Ron Paul now. He won in 2010. He also won in 2011. Now, when he won in 2010, ladies and gentlemen, there was a large group in the crowd that really wanted Mitt to win. They were sour. Well, bad sportsmanship, but they basically booed Ron when he won the first time. The second time, there was nothing but claps and support for Ron because, as you know, the issue of freedom is popular. And so what happened is Ron Paul did very well in the second one. They somehow got mixed up on sound bites again. And they say it was an error, but I don't believe it, and I'll tell you why after the sound bite. But what happened is they played the 2010 booing sound bite for the 2011 win. Here it is.
During a live introduction to Congressman Ron Paul on Tuesday, America's Newsroom incorrectly aired a clip from the 2010 CPAC event in Washington rather than this year's event. It was clearly a mistake. We used the wrong videotape. There are similarities in the shot between last year's event and this year. 2011, screen left, 2010, screen right. Ron Paul won both years. However, there were audible boos in 2010, while you heard a lot more cheering this year. It's an honest mistake. We apologize for the error, and we look forward to having Representative Paul back on our program very soon.
Now, here's the problem with that lie. Are you ready? The host, go look this up. You can see videos on the internet. I just don't have forever to play sound bites. But what happened is the host started out and said, hi, Ron. Everybody's booing for you. Did you find out who was booing for you? Man, that's not really what you'd like. Hi, Ron. Now, I got a question. If they just mixed up the videos, would the host be prepared to lead with that? No, I don't think so. So the bottom line is they lied. They pretend they got mixed up. They didn't get mixed up at all. They just don't really want Ron Paul to get on a roll. You see, the media is kind of like a basketball game, ladies and gentlemen. You know what? You go down the lane and you make a hammer dunk, and now it's on fire, and the crowd's with you, and then you make another score, and then you steal the ball, and now you got to take a timeout, buddy. You got to stop that, right? Okay, well, that's what they do here. They don't want Ron Paul to get nothing but claps and have people believe he might win the California straw poll if that happened. He actually won that. All right, slide 13. Now, I have the title on this one. Can you say election tampering? Because what happens is, did you know the White House and the talk show hosts are good friends? They really are. So 2 weeks before an election, they have 36 talk show hosts hanging out on the White House front lawn, broadcasting live. Now, the rest of us are told in the media, fascinatingly enough, well, you know, when you do radio advertising for politicians, you've got to do your lowest rate. There's all these regulations and laws that govern us. But you got to do the lowest rate, and you got to let all the different politicians have their fair, they can buy the media at the same amount and the same rate as all the other guys to make it fair in elections. Well, they ratchet us down to that type of regulation. The White House just rolls out their 3,000 favorite talk show, or 3 dozen, favorite talk show hosts to tell the tale 2 weeks before an election. Now, do you think that might influence your coverage if you were brought to the White House and wined and dined and let broadcast live from the White House lawn? Think it might be kind of a notch on your belt as a talk show? I'm legitimate in the business now, me and George. Me and Bill, me and Brock. You know, we go way back. Kind of an idea. All right, number 15. You guys know what a conspiracy theory is? What's the difference between a conspiracy theory and a conspiracy fact? Can I ask you that? Oh, one's true. Yeah, right. Well, look out. You'll be a truther. You might be worth Al-Qaeda. But the truth is, the difference here is whether you document it as a fact. So I call this one conspiracy theory or conspiracy fact. The White House has their friends there. Okay? And what's interesting to me about this is it basically says that White House talk show hosts didn't really tell anybody they were going to be broadcasting from there, and they weren't really allowed to talk about what they learned at those meetings. So you kind of got insider White House stuff. So not only is it the favorite talk show hosts go to the White House, George Bush has done it, Bill Clinton's done it, Barack does it, but they're not really allowed to even tell you what they talked about. Are you guys okay with that? Do you think it'd affect the coverage that is given? I went and had steak with George, and he's a good dude. The power of the man is impressive. That's what Glenn Beck was saying after the event. Kind of interesting. Slide 16, I call it a talk radio star chamber. Okay? What is a conspiracy fact? When a bunch of people meet together and have a big old powwow and don't tell you what they talk about? Very interesting. Turns out to be a notch on the talk show host belts. They become well known in the biz. They get their credibility. But the problem is, these stories here, you can see the sources that I've got, they document. They're not allowed to quote the president directly. They're not allowed to really tell you what they talked about. They just don't do that. Remember, Michael Savage told you that. They don't do that. The Velvet Hammer's at work. So it's very concerning to me when these talk show hosts are so closely allied with the White House. I thought the mainstream press was supposed to be independent. Okay, but remember, you might not get a press pass if you don't go and if you break that code of silence and stuff. I call those conspiracy facts. They smack of star chambers. And if the president invited me to the White House, I wouldn't go. You want to know why I wouldn't go? Because frankly, even though I'm a good guy, the fact is it'll have to compromise my message. You make friends with people and you say, George is actually a good dude, I mean, after all, he sent my wife flowers. See, you just get compromised. That's why we got to stay independent. All right, slide 17. This one's entitled Silence is Golden. And Joel Skousen puts it best in his World Affairs brief. He says, they do put out a lot of truth. I mean, if Glenn Beck and Rush and Sean and Mike, if they didn't say anything we agreed with, nobody would listen to them, right? Okay, I mean, that's why the Democrat talk radio doesn't do any good. But what happens is, it's oftentimes what they withhold that tells you the tale. It's what they don't talk about. Like we don't talk about our meetings at the White House with George. We don't talk about the Velvet Hammer coming down. That's why we don't cover that, right? We don't talk about the fact that, even though we used the wrong video, it was intentional because we have a point. We don't really like Ron. I mean, after all, our polls are really important until Ron wins them. Then they don't matter. Isn't that how they do that? Okay, slide 18. Now, one of the claims that we make is you better put your money where your mouth is. And then we document this a little bit for you. The Republicans do it. But in this case, you got an entrepreneur doing it, okay? He's the founder of PayPal. His name is Peter Thiel. And Peter put $1.25 million into floating boat cities that would be out in the ocean. This is real. He put $1.25 million. He says, people don't believe we'll create these libertarian communities where we'll have no rules, no government. But people will think we're just kind of silly until we actually do it. Then it'll be too late to stop us. The power of one. What's his name again? Peter Thiel? Wow, the guy's wanted, but he just put $1.25 million in there. Just think what we could do with $1.25 million, ladies and gentlemen. Whether it be for media, like I'm involved in, whether it be for helping the Constitution Party with their next convention, whether it be budgets to help patriots travel and tell the tale of liberty, whether it be to make sure that our candidates get a chance to be heard in the media too, whether it be, we can go on and on and on, but that's a lot of money for one guy to just toss in for his hobby. But he even put a chunk of money in to help people skip college. I wonder if it would have helped Steve Jobs in the day, just wondering. All right, number 19, the Republicans and Democrats are putting their money where their mouth is. You got the Republican and the Democrat radio. The Republicans have private radio because they pitch private sources. They believe in private, right? But they're all in with the White House. They're grandfathered in with the FCC, and it goes on and on. Or you can have the blatant Democrat radio. The Democrats have government radio, and they blatantly admit it, right? So what would you rather have? Controlled media admitted by the Democrats or controlled media pretending that it's not controlled by the Republicans? Well, I don't know. I guess I'm just not for the Republican press. But the issue here, ladies and gentlemen, is honesty. I'm not attacking these people because I don't like their personalities. But to me, it's a matter of honesty in the press, though. It's a matter of, do we have an integrity factor here? All right, slide 20. The homosexuals are doing it. They're putting their money where their mouth is. Yeah, they got lots and lots of money, and they got lots of advertisers, and they're growing big time. Their latest advertisers to support them are Johnson & Johnson, Merck, Showtime, Florida Keys, Air New Zealand, the MGM Grand, the Mirage Hotels. Hey, they're putting their money where their mouth is, and they're growing big time. It's fascinating to me how whenever you talk to patriots about putting their money where their mouth is, well, they kind of have a strange attitude of how they go about it. They're like, Sam, how much of a return am I going to get on my money? And they're very oriented that way. And I don't have a problem with making a return. I believe in the American way. But I guess what I'm trying to say is, how do you define a return? Is it just enumerated in dollars? Or when Chuck Baldwin runs around the country and writes his columns and tells about the principles of liberty, he may not get the monetary gain that he deserves, but you know what? He educates Americans. He gets a whole lot more back for his family and for his country and for his God than you can imagine. I say the dividends are tremendous. Slide 21. The problem, ladies and gentlemen, is that Americans don't put their money where their mouth is. I believe we're the majority. I believe most people are moral people and care about America and care about things that matter. But how do you deal with the indoctrination of the government schools and the mainstream press? You just don't stand a chance until we can tell our story. So it's the hard truth that everybody's asking for money and everybody wants a return. Okay? So what'll happen is this, everybody's asking for money. And when they ask for money, it's interesting to me because I don't mind giving the money. Most of the people who are asking me for money have a good cause. You know what? I want to support Ron Paul. I want to support a lot of different people, but I simply don't have the funds to do so. And so it's kind of like this. Everybody says, I'm with you in spirit. I'm with you. I'm right behind you. They're so far I can't even see them. Number 22. All right, we got a simple solution, ladies and gentlemen. Put your money where your mouth is. The power of one can and indeed will make a difference. And so the question is, what can we do that won't break the bank? What can we do that'll really make a difference? And I'm submitting $1 a day. Okay? I mean, when you compare fiat money to gold and silver coinage, $1 a day in fiat money is only like 2 to 5 cents, right? So we're not asking for much. But here's the deal. I'm not even asking for $1 a day for me. I'm not saying give me $1 a day. I'm not saying give the media $1 a day. That's certainly the cause that I advocate because that's where I feel like my calling and my talents are. But what I'm saying to you is, what if we got a board together of a bunch of different political groups? And what if we got good, honest patriots? We can't have Johnny-come-latelys because we got to know that they're true blue really for the cause. And we put a board together and we raised $1 a day from each American. And we got 1 million Americans. Do you realize we'd have $365 million a year? It's a lot of money. I think we might be able to help a lot of good patriots travel with that kind of money. So I'm proposing a board of directors. I'm proposing a third-party accounting firm to account for the money. I'm proposing that we put together, attorneys and people who can make sure things are right. I would just hope to be part of it. This wasn't even my idea in the first place. A guy by the name of Jerry Hughes. His name is Jerry Hughes. He used to do a radio program called Washington on Trial. Now that's my kind of program. But anyway, he pitched this $1 a day, and he said, you know what? Americans believe they can't do anything. That's the power of one person, $1. If we had 1 million of us, we'd have 365 million. What if we could only get 100,000 of us? We'd have what, 36,500,000? I think we could do a little bit with that. What if we only had 10,000 Americans and we only got $3.65 million? What if we couldn't get that many? We could only get 1,000 of us. We'd still have $36,500 a year to make a difference in fund causes. Or no, I'm sorry, you'd have $365,000 if you had 1,000 people. $365,000. It's a lot of money. The first radio station we bought for 120 grand, sold it for 180 grand. If you're careful, you can buy a lot of media. You could fund a lot of conservative people traveling. You could have conventions such as these. You could make a lot of difference with that kind of money. What about 100,000 people? You'd have what, 36,500,000? Yeah, put your money where your mouth is. What if you had less than that? Even if you had 100 people, you'd have $36,000. So all I'm telling you is I'm proposing that it's not just for me. Don't give the money to me. Don't give the money just to the media. Let's get a group of people together that wants to put their money where their mouth is, and let's fund quality projects. And let's have a board together to decide what projects. When you build a house, I'm in the real estate business, you don't just give somebody 300 grand to build a house. What you do is you give draws based on accountability, right? Okay, we could do that if enough of us got together to do so. So now we're on slide 23 where we end. All I'm telling you is, my fellow Americans, let freedom ring. It's not going to happen if we just simply meet, greet, and retreat. It's going to happen if we put our money where our mouth is. We stand up and we say we're going to fund good causes. The Founding Fathers gave their fortunes and their sacred honor. We're just asking for $1 a day to fund all kind of groups. And what the real result would be is we could truly put our money where our mouth is and make a difference. So that, I believe, to be the problem and the solution. The problem is, hey, you've got to have the media if you want to say in what happens. And the only way you can have a media is if you put your money where your mouth is, wrestle with the hogs, and own a piece of the media. We declare, we the people, along with the grace of the Almighty, we can and indeed will restore our grand old republic, but you got to get involved, make it a great day, and do what's right, will you? Hey, thanks.